Hello everyone. So in this new video, we'll be learning about Git and GitHub. This video is divided into four major parts. They are introduction, Git basics, branching strategies, Git and GitHub remote basics. When I talk about introduction, we'll be discussing about Git differentiating with another tool called as SVN. SVN is a centralized version control system. Moving on to the next part, that is Git basics. In Git basics, we'll be learning few basic commands that are required to set up a local repository. Moving on to the next topic, there's branching strategies. When I say branching strategies, there are certain branches included while working on a larger scale project, such as feature branch, hotfix branch, release branch, and the default one that will be master on main. So, what are the reasons behind these branches will be discussed in this particular part, both theoretical and implementation part. And moving on to the last and foremost part, that's Git and GitHub remote basics. Git is a version control system, but GitHub is a distributed system which is built upon a version control system called this Git. Uh, there are certain tools such as GitHub, like GitLab, Bitbucket. Everything is built upon a version control system called as Git, but they have certain additional features which could make a huge difference for working with a large scale project. So we'll not waste any time and we'll move on to the first part, that is introduction. Yeah. In this introduction part, we'll be learning about version control system and sharing file over. So this is where Git comes into picture. When I say version control system, I will give an example and explain it in a clear way. So if programmer is assigned with the task of developing a simple calculator with addition functionality. So after a few days, his manager would say him to add one more functionality, that is same application with subtraction functionality. Again, after a few days, manager would say him to add one more functionality, that is multiplication. So right now he has this application with three functionalities. But what happens is, what if manager uh, has that strong feeling that this application is only used for additional functionality? So adding subtraction and multiplication would make it more complex. So he would say, could you please take it off? I mean, about these two particular indications or functionalities. So what developer can do is either he could develop a new application adding additional functionality, or else just removing those two functionalities that have been already developed by the developer. But right now this is a simple application. When you're working with complex applications or projects, this would be a hectic job for programmers. For that reason, we do use of version control system. So in version control system, if developer or programmer develops this application calculator with additional functionality, then again he would add subtraction. If he wants only additional functionality, he would revert back to the previous version of the code, which is tracked by this version control system with certain ID. So he would go to the previous version, that is additional functionality. Again, he wants to add subtraction functionality. He would go to the other previous version where it includes subtraction functionality along with addition functionality. So the newer version would have addition and subtraction. So this would be the advantages of version control system. So next point is sharing So, or suppose we have developed an application, for example, application. So if you want to share this code to your friend, so what could be the possible ways to share this application? There could be you can send the code to Gmail, or or you can use any messaging app to send this particular code. But what if your project is way complicated compared to this simple application like calculator and all? So it might have certain directories included with certain large files. So you can't effectively share the file or whole project using Gmail or messaging. So this is where GitHub comes into picture. So you will add all files to a repository. So don't worry, I will tell what repository is and what it does. So just imagine that you will add each and every file included in this particular project to a repository, and you will, I mean, it will have certain link associated with this repository. So you will share that link to your friend or any other programmer who wants to see or view your code. So this repository link will be shared to this programmer who will have the same application link. Either he can fork it or clone it to the local system. I mean, or fork it to his own distributed system. It depends on his interest. So this is where GitHub comes into picture. So GitHub is nothing but a distributed system built upon a version control system called as Git. So Git is the parent of all distributed systems such as GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. They're all distributed system, but they might have some additional functionality. Some might work better with CI/CD solutions. Some might work better with some other solutions, depending on the factors that are included in development. So yeah, these are the basic points that I had to explain it to you before going for SVN, which is centralized one. So next we'll learn about distributed system versus SVN. So Git was SVN. Git is a distributed system wherein SVN is a centralized version control system. If I say centralized, it means there are two programmers working on a project. There will be a central server. Programmer one will be pushing code, whatever he does to server. Even programmer two will be doing the same thing. If central server uh, goes down, whole code base will be affected. So if programmer one wants to uh, review or take up the code of programmer two, he would be reaching the same central server and copying the code to his local system. So nowhere they had an idea of storing this in a distributed system. For that reason, SVN was overtaken by Git by the concept of distributed virtual control system. Distributed in the sense, this programmer will have more than one server, more than one distributed system where his code will be stored. He can store the same code in many distributed systems. If programmer 2 wants to access the code of programmer 1, he can just collect this code and fork this particular code to his own distributed system. So Git is more reliable than SVN. So even though Git is more reliable, there are certain companies they do use of SVN even now because of certain regulations or governance policies they have. So in this part, we'll be looking on to the basic Git commands used to set up a local repository. So everything will be done in an AWS EC2 instance. So right now I don't have an instance. I'll go for launching instance. So I launch only one instance which is required to set up a local, remote server. Git, uh, GitHub. So I'll be using Ubuntu server so that I don't have to pay any charge for the usage. So I will use I have old key generated, so I'll use the same Git key for SSH connection. And so we're done with the instance part. I'm launching this particular instance. It will take few seconds, so it's done. So I have this running instance right now. So I'll be connecting to local terminal using SSH client. So let me open my terminal. Yeah, okay. I'll be changing the directory to download. That is where my PEM file is stored, and I'll be running this. I'll be running this SSH command. Asking for permission, yes. So we have connected to the remote server making use of SSH key through local system. So this is the remote Ubuntu server. You can see if I do current working directory. So this is the current working directory where I'm in. So this is the IP addresses you can see here. Oh, addresses and it's 172.31.172.1. This is the private IP address of this remote system. Or Ubuntu system. So this is where in this server we'll be implementing everything with Git basics commands. So we start with a directory git hub one. It's enough. Less. So we have this directory. We'll go inside the directory. Right now we don't have anything. So if I want to create a file, then I would write a command called as touch app one.py. So you don't have to be, I mean, working with any programming language to learn Git or GitHub. I'm just giving a simple example to make things more clear for you. So I'll be writing basic applications in this particular uh, programming files in app1.py. So we'll move on. We'll create the, or before writing any code in this file, the first thing you're supposed to do is you have to init the server. You need the repository. In the sense, you have to you have to set up a remote local repository, making use of git init command. When you write this command and click enter, empty git repository will be initialized. So if I, uh, yeah, right now you can't see that particular uh, git file because it is stored in the form of hidden file. If you say ls minus, hyphen la, you would see this hidden folder where it has a lot of things included. Let me show you. CD. Okay. So it includes references, objects, information, hook, description, config, branches. Each and every information with respect to this repository will be stored in this hidden folder in app1.py file. So Vim is a text editor. Vim is a default editor we have in this particular server, Ubuntu server, Vim app1.py. So we have this particular editor. First, you're supposed to click I, which which will give access to this particular editor. We're going to the insert mode. If we click on I button on the keyboard. So I'll be writing this function. Come on. So this is the syntax of Python programming language. You don't have to worry about the syntax and all. Just understand the concept. So return 8 plus 5, comma 6. Escape colon x to save and exit this file. So if I click on Git status, you would see that app1.py has certain changes, but it is not a track. So if you want to track this particular file, you will have to add this file to the repository. Git add app1.py. So either you can use this particular command like git add space dot. It means what and all changes you have, it might be more than one file will be tracked making use of this command. So right now it has been added. So we'll see git status. Git status is a command used to see the status of the file. So right earlier it was in red color, so it was not yet being tracked. So right now it is tracked. So Git local repository is tracking this particular file. So whatever changes you do in this file will be tracked. So after tracking, you're supposed to commit this to the repository, local repository. So git commit -m, say that addition functionality is added. Enter. So you'd see one file changed, file insertions, create more 100644 add.php. So if I type git status again, you see that on master has nothing to commit, working very clean. It says that you have committed your code to the local repository. You don't have anything, any more files or codes to commit in this particular repository. So if I click on git log, you'll get to know this commit ID. So making use of this particular ID, you can revert back to previous version as I mentioned earlier while explaining the introduction part of Git and GitHub. So let me clear this screen. So right now we have this one file which has been committed to the master brain branch. We'll see what are the branches available and how we can create branches in Git, making use of certain files or features. We'll move on to the next part. So again, I'll open the same app1.py file and I'll add one more uh, function. Click I for insert mode. So this sub a comma b return a minus b sub 6.5. Skip X. Now, if I see the status of this file, yeah, you can see it is modified, but it is not yet added to the local repository. So again, you will have to git add dot secret status. You'll see that it's green in color. Now you're supposed to commit this particular file. Git commit -m added with a new functionality, that is subtraction. So enter. So one file changed. There were three more insertions and one deletion. That's space. So git log, you would see two different commits with different IDs. You see git status. There is nothing to commit. Working free screen.